The 90s marked an initiative by Fox to make a substantial push into the gaming space. They created an arm for their organization that would be focusing on publishing video games based on their established properties. Many of Fox's big films were made into games. Everything was covered from Aliens to Die Hard. Probe Interactive contracted with Fox to develop a game that covered the first 3 Die Hard films. This would be a collection of arcade games that would provide a unique gameplay experience for each film. Die Hard 1 was a third-person shooter, Die Hard 2 a rail shooter, and Die Hard 3 a driving game. At the same time, Sega was developing a new beat-em-up which was highly inspired by the original Die Hard. Sega and Fox worked together to take this beat-em-up and release it under the Die Hard name in America. Die Hard Arcade would go on to be a hit for everyone involved. As such, there was a lot of interest to create a sequel, but Sega no longer had access to the Die Hard license, so the sequel took on a similar name as its Japanese release. Join me as we take a look back at Dynamite Cop. Many of the same developers from the Golden Axe series were very interested in creating more beat-em-ups, but they wanted to provide something a bit more cinematic than what their prior games had. In combination with this and their love for big American action movies at the time like Die Hard, they began work on a brand new brawler. This new game would improve on the pacing of prior games of this type by including flashy playable moments that would connect the main levels together. The presentation of them would be very similar to a cutscene, with the addition of the player needing to hit a specific button at the right time to complete them. The goal was to lessen the downtime between fights and keep the player focused on the action. The setup for the action would be centered around 2 heroes being dropped into a building taken over by terrorists and needing to rescue the president's daughter. The Sega-based developer AM1 settled on the name Dynamite Deka for their title, but oddly enough, this would not be the only name for this game. During the development, the American arm of Sega had acquired the license to the Die Hard films. As a means to bank on the popularity of the films, Sega wanted the developers to have the game go by a more Die Hard focused title. The American release of Dynamite Deka would go by Die Hard Arcade, along with having a few other changes like changing the building's name to the Nakatomi Plaza, just like from the film, and the main character would now be John McClane. Die Hard Arcade would go on to be a success for Sega. While Sega did not retain the Die Hard license, Sega and the developers were very interested in making a sequel. So while this follow-up title would not be Die Hard in name, but the characters, mechanics, and feel from the original would carry on with the original Dynamite name. For their sequel, AM1 wanted to go bigger, including ideas that they had not implemented in the first, along with improving on the visual presentation and the enemy count. For gameplay improvements, a new addition would be the new directions the player could attack in. In Die Hard Arcade, the player could move up, down, left, and right, but only attack left and right. In the follow-up, the player could attack up and down along with diagonally. The goal was to expand the freedom of the combat. Another new element would be the power bar. Once filled, the player could do more damage along with pulling off new moves. The developers looked at the original and wanted to provide more replay value. They understood that while some may return back to their games to play them with their friends, they wanted to provide more incentives to increase the length of their games. This is where the idea for the missions came into play. Dynamite Cop would be in the title in America, and Dynamite Deka 2 would be the name that it would be in Japan, and would keep the Die Hard-like model, but now it would take place on a cruise ship. The objective would be the same: stop the terrorists and rescue the president captain's daughter. At the start of the game, the players could choose one of 3 missions, which translates into different routes to take. Each route would have areas that would be exclusive to that route. One route would have you fighting in a salon, whereas another mission would have you fighting in a gym, each with unique items to pick up and use and enemies to fight. Also, each of the routes would have similar levels, but the designs of them would be slightly altered for more variety. For example, a restaurant in one mission would be a more Asian-styled restaurant in another. Weapon pickups were an important part of the experience in the original, and were greatly added to and focused on for the sequel. Players can pick up different Sega arcade cabinets and throw them at enemies, along with throwing a variety of food and firing laser guns. Dynamite Cop would feature one additional character to select from, providing 3 different characters to choose at the start. The developers were not reinventing what they established in the first game. This sequel was focused on improving and refining the winning formula. In 1998, Dynamite Cop was released to the world. Dynamite Cop is an underrated and classic beat-em-up. It takes all the elements introduced in Die Hard Arcade and provides an even better experience. The action is silly, over the top, and very fun. Dynamite Cop leans more into the comical aspects that were seen in the original. You can fight with a French baguette, and the cheesy voice acting only contributes to the charm. The mission select allows for a greater amount of replay value as well. No matter if you are playing this in single player or in co-op, you are guaranteed to have a great time. The controls are rather simple. You can punch, kick, and jump. You can perform a wealth of combos based on your input combinations. If you get too close to an enemy, you will automatically begin grappling them, and depending on what buttons you hit, the grapples will significantly change. Some are really impressive, like breaking every bone in an enemy's body, or knocking them to the ground and pounding their face in. The combo list is rather large, and I found myself pulling off new combos each time I ran through the game. The punches and kicks all have great arcadey sound effects, adding some appropriate impact to each hit. All of the items have distinct sounds as well and appropriately fits this title. The impact is solid as well, as enemies react to each of your hits, and have the right amount of exaggerated movement when you hit them with weapons. The prior game allowed you to move in any direction, but you could only attack left to right. Now you can attack in any direction, allowing for more options, especially for all of the firearms. One new mechanic is the power meter that will slowly grow with each one of your power-ups. Once it is full, you will do more damage, along with having access to new combinations. Overall, the combat system is great. Returning are the many weapon pickups that you can use, along with really showing how this game is leaning more into its comical side. Some of my favorites return, like using a pepper shaker to stun enemies, along with many new ones like laser guns, spears, baguettes, shish kebabs, and frozen pieces of beef that can be eaten only after they break. One of my favorites, and honestly this feels like something that would be right at home in a Jackie Chan movie, is the plate of apples. You will throw each apple at an enemy, and once you are out, you will then toss the plate at them. This is all creatively silly and very funny. Enemy types also feel like the developers throw everything into this game. You will fight actual pirates, dancers, hairdressers, gym bros, cooks, Tommy gun-wielding foes, and crabmen. Some of the bosses surprised me as well, with larger foes like chefs and even facing off with a kraken. Returning are some of the environmental hazards that you need to dodge while fighting the terrorists. There is also a bit of vertical fighting, with you being able to fight on desks or tables. I love the destructible aspects of the levels, with many objects being damaged along with some even opening up new items and pickups. For example, you can hit a refrigerator and use the contents inside to refill your health or find new weapons. The cinematic elements remain intact with the camera zooming in for grapples, along with the defeat of the last enemy. New details are added as well, like how your character's clothes will be visibly damaged as you lose health. It is a bit silly that your clothes will be restored as your health increases, and while this is silly, I do not care and I love this. The QuickTime events return and function just like they did before, with success meaning dodging a shorter encounter or making the next encounter a bit easier, and failure resulting in an additional fight. One of the best additions to the formula is the use of the mission selection. You can now choose between one of 3 ways to tackle the cruise ship. This will affect which rooms you will encounter along with the style of rooms shared in each of the missions. This means that in order to see everything this campaign has to offer, you need to beat it at least 3 times. The amount of variation is great. A location in mission 1 would be a salon, and then a gym in another mission, and each of these new locations features specific items for that room, like for the gym being able to use different weights as weapons. After you beat all of the missions, you will unlock harder versions of those missions with different restrictions, like one being a time trial of sorts. There are some additional modes like a versus mode and a survival area. The story is simple and full of awesome action movie cheese. It is essentially Die Hard on a ship, so on a base level it reminds me of that movie Under Siege. You are tasked with taking out the bad guys and again rescuing the president's daughter. The presentation is slick as seen from many of the in-game sequences, along with charmingly corny line delivery and fantastic music. Dynamite Cop is substantially sillier than the first, and it's better for it. Much of these funny elements are seen in the gameplay, like the weapon pickups, and the wealth of enemies along with the cutscenes. For example, the main bad guy is trying to find the president's daughter. In the first, she was hiding in a large desk cabinet, but in the sequel, she is hiding in a briefcase that is right in the middle of the room. This is absolutely stupid and unintentionally funny, and I loved it. Just like with the missions featuring new levels, the cutscenes will also change depending on the mission you select. Before we move to the conclusion, let me show you some of the soundtrack. It fuels the action nicely, along with being something good to listen to even while not playing the game. Here are a few tracks from the game. Dynamite Cop is an awesome and underrated beat-em-up. It takes everything that worked in Die Hard Arcade, cranks it up to 11 on the silly meter, and delivers a game that has awesome action along with great humor. While not an official Die Hard titled experience, it is obviously influenced by those action films with a style and charm that is so unique to Japanese developers. The action is consistently great, with plenty of different foes to fight, weapons to pick up, locations to fight in, and bosses to defeat. The 3 distinct mission paths increase the replay value while showing the level of detail that these developers put into this game. Dynamite Cop is an absolute classic. I highly recommend it. If you are interested in being notified of new videos, please hit the subscribe button and bell. And if you would like to support the channel and get early access to content, please check out my Patreon. All of the links will be at the end of this video and within the description. And thank you very much for watching.